Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on applying for masters during COVID time. UG STEM Peers is a student-run organization with the active participation of a large number of undergraduate students. We have created a platform to connect students passionate about science with both their counterparts across the world and eminent researchers in the field. Our team, under the guidance of the STEM Peers group, has also created SciExplore, a platform that lets you explore the universe of science at your fingertips. The blog features articles and illustrations from undergraduate students across all STEM fields and allows them to communicate about subjects that fascinate them. We would be grateful if you would spread the word about our platform and encourage your peers to write and illustrate for us, as it will be an excellent experience for them. Additionally, you can help us achieve our goal of making science accessible to all by applying for our Campus Ambassador program. SciExplore features articles in 5 categories. Explore is a feature that allows authors to write about any topic that fascinates them. Tales of Science is a feature that highlights the stories of scientists, their inspirations and journeys as they sculpted their way to scientific breakthroughs. Decrypted is a feature that presents landmark foundational papers in science. These articles aim to simplify these papers while maintaining scientific accuracy. Bazinga is the fun one. This feature includes quizzes, crosswords, puzzles, etc. on science-related topics. Lastly, we have internships and projects. This feature aims to bring to light the various opportunities in STEM for students. Students are encouraged to share their experiences with their peers to allow more students to explore these opportunities. As we know, almost everybody here has lost at least a year of their education due to COVID. Online lectures for science students means no laboratory experience whatsoever. This has left most of us confused about the path we would want to take after completing our undergraduate degrees. Our panel discussion today aims to resolve some of the doubts one would have while considering applying to universities in the middle of a pandemic. Welcome to our panel discussion, Applying for Masters During COVID Time. Our panelists for today are some of our very own seniors who have been through a year of online college as well. Post this, they are currently heading for their masters. Our panelists are Arjun Rupa, Heidelberg University, Rehan Pace, University of Bonn, Pearl D'Souza, Nottingham Trent University, Tyra Marshall, University of Nottingham, and Karina Gala, Manipal University. In case you have any questions during the discussion, feel free to put them in the chat box. We will address these questions at the end of the discussion. Our moderators for today are Neha Lonkar and Kevin Abraham. So let's begin.
Great. Thank you, Isha, for introducing our panelists. I'm so grateful this is online because I'm horrible with remembering names. Because every name is so different. And I think that's why I have difficulty selecting courses because there are so many courses and colleges out there. And it's really not possible to go through them individually. I was wondering what factors we should keep in our mind to filter courses or colleges. So what are your thoughts on this, Karina?
For courses, right?
Yeah, for courses, yeah.
So for me, 2 key important factors are your subject of interest. So if you take my example, I was really interested in dev bio and endocrinology. So it was very clear for me that I wanted to do clinical embryology. And the second most important factor was whether you want to go into academia or research or the industry also. So these 2 I kept in mind while I was deciding my courses.
So any of the points other panelists would like to add on?
I would like to mention that since we are in such a COVID situation, we should look at the positive points and take advantage of some of the things that would not be available to us in a regular situation. So right now, if you are having a bunch of courses between which you have difficulty choosing, you have the ability and the freedom to email the course leaders and talk to them directly, look up the course content, and there's a lot of flexibility.
Right, that I do agree with.
No, if I could add on one point, I guess you should just look at everything. And some of the courses, for example, can just the name can be a little misleading. So if you're also seeing courses, you should also start seeing the curriculum, because there are universities which have a department of medicine and a department of science. Now, both of them will offer, say, biochemistry courses, but then the faculty may be different. You may like the faculty which is in the department of science rather than the more medical focused one. So these are also things that you probably need to keep in mind while shortlisting courses. And and with regards to colleges, I guess you just look at a variety of them, because each one has its own pros and cons. And while rankings, often people tend to look at rankings, and while rankings help and give you some kind of an idea as to where do you want to put your cap, you still need to, beyond a point, they don't help, because you still need to look at individual courses. Some universities are more famous for a certain course. For example, would you rather go to a place which has very little collaborations with places around, or would you rather go to a place which is like a scientific hub, a city that's a scientific hub with several collaborations with other universities and other institutions? So I guess this is one thing that you also need to keep in mind, apart from just like the name and the name of the university and name of the course.
So can I add, for colleges, if you're thinking about research, you should also look into the work the professors, or the work that's being done over there. And if you're looking into industry, you should look for the market, like how the market currently is over there. For example, if I want to do clinical embryology and I had applied to Australia, but currently they don't accept citizens from India because they want to employ their own citizens. So you should really keep that in mind also.
So yeah, that's actually quite helpful. Even like as Arjun mentioned, about the rankings, I think it doesn't matter as much as Arjun mentioned, as only I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but rankings only are sort of like an indicator for how well the university is also funded. Is it usually proportional?
No,
Sorry, Tyra, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Tyra.
No, rankings, so there are different forms of rankings, but when it comes to more research-oriented courses, the rankings are based on how many citations the university receives in that particular department. So yeah, but I completely agree with Arjun that people have this, misconception that you should go for a university which is ranked really high. But if that university isn't offering a course that you want to pursue, or it's maybe there, but just not there, and there's a university which is perhaps a few rungs below that on the ladder, but the course is spot on, I think it would be a better option going for a course you like and you see yourself doing, instead of just, chasing after a name.
Yeah, definitely. Just to drive that point home, you will hear this advice from some people when they say, you need to aim for a university that's in the top 100 rankings. But if you look at a particular university, for example, the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, on the QS system, it's ranked somewhere in the 400s. But on the Times Higher Education system, they're ranked somewhere in the 200s. And I know someone from there who is doing really, really great work on the coronavirus. And the reason he's been able to do so well is because the virology course over there was almost tailor-made for him. All of his interests, he could, do the course properly over there. And because of the curriculum and the syllabus over there and the researchers over there as well.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I do agree. So Ajay, you were going to say something? Do you want to comment?
Some stuff on the lines of what Tyra and Rehan. In fact, I was going to say what Rehan was saying about how same universities can have very disparate rankings across ranking systems. So don't just go by one university. If at all you want to even look at rankings, don't just look at one type of rankings. You have a ranking.
Right, that's an excellent idea. Yeah, thank you for that. So, and filtering for colleges is one thing, but personally, I always feel incompetent when I look at these people who actually got into courses before us, and like they published papers, and because they've all often done their MSCs or their degree included a thesis project, right? Now, due to COVID, labs have been closed, and comparatively, other countries are relatively more active. So I personally don't see myself getting in anywhere, as I can't compare to these vast research experiences the other students have. So what are your thoughts on that? And like, how important is this lab experience when it comes to applying for masters? Arjun, would you like to comment on that?
Well, yeah, you brought it up. I don't have a publication. I'm just saying, considering you brought it up, especially. So I personally think, obviously, I will be foolish to say that it's not important. Maybe it will obviously help your CV and all of that. But the thing is, in my experience, it's about what you do. It's if you have had any research experience, it's about what you have done there. Even if you have just done techniques over there. So I from my experience in a particular internship, sure, all my job over there was to just repeat a protocol again and again. But then in my applications or in my interviews, I made it very clear that while that was also my job, I also contributed, say, via ideas and suggestions that can improve the lab. Now that is different because everybody is going to do an internship, will do these things. But the extra bit is when you actually try to contribute to the lab outside of your sphere of focus. So that is with regards to the research experience. But also one more thing that I wanted to add is, it may probably be important if you directly want to go into for a PhD, maybe publications or a thorough thesis. But I guess now it also, when you're writing your SOPs, what I have felt is that it's also important to have a clear vision as to what you want to do going ahead, because no one expects you to go for an MSc and publish 5 papers and all of that stuff. You're going to learn and build your skill further, and it's so you need to make it very clear that you have a certain goal in mind and how the university helps your goal and how you can help how you can help the university and how you can contribute to the university. So at this stage, if there's anyone bothered about things like publications and stuff, I don't think it's something to be thinking about. If you have had any research experience, great. But other than that, there are other things as well that can be done. So maybe I don't think I'll touch upon it later, but obviously we can talk about it.
So like, what would the other panelists say? Like, how can you boost your application if you're lacking in these research areas?
So currently, like you said, and like everyone knows, a lot of research laboratories and universities itself are closed, and you don't have practical lab experience. And when you're talking about lab experience, you're talking about wet lab work. And just like Arjun said, it is not a prerequisite that you have to have 5 publications. You have to have 2 internships at IIT or ICER or whatever. Not a prerequisite, but it certainly gives you an edge. And I'm sure that the panelists would agree with me on that. And right now, since there's I could definitely go into this in detail later, but just because labs aren't open, it does not mean that you cannot boost your skill set and boost, what you can put onto your CV and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of things that you can do at home. If you're going into a biology related field, there's one thing that comes to mind, which is bioinformatics. And that is one thing that you should definitely start to explore, because it's something that, at least in the course that I did, I personally felt that it was neglected. Another thing that you could do is learn a programming language for big data science. That is a subject that is in almost every research related course, because all the places that I applied to in the Netherlands, in Germany, even though they were research-based biomedical science and immunology courses, there was one paper and one subject on big data science. So, starting your basics in R or Python or something like that is definitely beneficial. And more than giving you an edge, it will actually help you. Don't do something just to put it on your CV. Do something because it will help you in your master's and actually help you grow as a scientist.
That's nice. So in supplementing what Rehan has said, do any of our other panelists have any advice about how you can supplement your application during the master's in addition to what Rehan just told us?
I just feel like everyone should expose themselves to different things so that they find out, I mean, they realize what they like, what they don't like, and then they, get deeper into whatever they decide they like. So if you don't go with the intent of, oh, I want to put this on my CV, I am doing different things, I'm getting experience, and okay, so simultaneously you can just put it on your CV because you're doing so many things. But just to just for yourself, you just want to explore basically.
I'd like to add something. So what Karina said is very true. And I think One misconception that's often there, which to be honest, even I had it for a while, but once you start applying to universities, especially like for like your masters and stuff, the idea that we have is that if we're doing like say field A and we want to do our masters in along that line, all our experience needs to be just there, which is not really true, especially when it comes to applying abroad, because they not only regard like development in other fields which may not be related remotely to your field, but they even give extra weightage to it because they want to see like an all-round development in you. And there's always something known as transferable skills, and I think that's really important. And at least I personally didn't know much about it till I started like researching about it during my applications. So you need to like look how anything you've done, like I worked as a content writer for a short while and I could like transfer that into genetics. Like I applied for genetics for my master's and I managed to like give transferable skills into that. So you need to really, keep an eye out for like doing stuff you enjoy also and getting your transferable skills out of it.
You guys have really, I think, answered a lot of people's queries about.
Add on to that now, especially with the context of Xavier's and our curriculum. So there's one thing. So you need to be a little innovative about this because you also need to write to the coordinators of every course. So one of the things that can be done is so in the biochemistry life science program and whenever you have taken biochemistry, we had a grant proposal writing course in the end, right? And that's usually a project, but then it was made into a grant proposal writing thing for us. Maybe you could just write to a university saying, I have written a grant proposal review. Can I submit it as an example for a thesis? Because they also understand it's not just the one thing about COVID has been it's worldwide. So all students are affected. So the universities also may realize, okay, while that person hasn't done the things, they know how to go about it. And writing a grant is a very important aspect to life as a scientist and all of that. So I guess that is something that can be looked at. Even otherwise, there are things like events are still going on. You can always present a poster. And a poster isn't necessarily something on your own research, something that's new. It can always be a review of something. And if someone is particularly ambitious, maybe a second-year student, if they can get in touch with the prof and if they are curious enough, maybe even just try writing a review paper over your summer break. This is slightly outlandish, but then it probably can be done if you just put your whole heart and soul to it. And I'm pretty sure if you start submitting that to journals or it is at least some start and it's an alternative. So essentially driving home the point about being a little innovative in these times that you can't actually just go the route of going to a lab, applying to a lab. That's about.
Okay, I think that's been very informative for everybody here. While we're on the topic of our application, so a core part of a lot of master's applications is reaching out to potential supervisors, right? You go through your courses, you look at who you might want to work under. So do you have any advice about reaching out to these supervisors? Is there any particular way you should be approaching them? Is there anything you should keep in mind when you're writing to them? So maybe Tyra, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, so I'd say firstly, if you like zero down on a couple of supervisors that you like to reach out to, acquaint yourself with their work, probably because you don't want to be caught in a situation where you just, like it's often just cordial to say that, I've been following your work, and then they say something and then you catch yourself in a situation where you don't know what they're talking about. So I'd say acquaint yourself with their work. And your main thing should be when you're looking for a supervisor, read their papers, and whoever interests you, reach out to them accordingly. Don't look at, okay, my course ka the topmost person's this, so I'm going to reach out to that person. Maybe their papers aren't exactly what you're looking at. You probably prefer someone who's probably just joined or isn't at such a high position, but it all comes down to the work that they're doing eventually and what interests you.
Would any of our other panelists like to contribute to this question?
So some labs and universities, so I can, from personal example, I can talk about McGill University in Canada. They actually have a full document, and have described how exactly, because one of the prerequisites for their programs are to write to scientists and to get an approval from them, right? So they have very clearly described what all you need to do and how you should go about it. Other than that, scientists also on their, if you go to an individual scientist web page, they also under their join us section or join the team section, they will describe what all stages what all things have to be done for a master's student or for a PhD student. So if you want to apply, you can, they clearly describe, saying maybe send us an SOP or a motivation letter. And continuing what Tyra said, just don't send generic emails. Like don't send one email to 100 people. That won't work. You need to personalize it and spend some time on it so that they realize the effort has been put in. So yeah, that's
Yeah, they need to be willing to take you, and you need to convince them to take you, because there could be 10 other people who are better than you in terms of skills. I'm just being brutally honest. There could be 10 other people better than you in terms of skills, but they may not be able to put it into words and phrase their grant or proposal to that mentor or whoever the professor is, and convince them to, take them in and work under them. So that is one thing you definitely have to do. Tailor make each and every email or letter that you're sending to a professor, because professors have been doing their job for years, and they can definitely see through generic emails with just a few keywords changed. And one word of advice is, do not lie, not even a tiny white lie. Because if you get caught in the lie, remember one mistake. If they ask you something that you've mentioned in your letter, something about their work, if you start to fumble or if you don't know what it is, you can just kiss that opportunity goodbye. Because if you're lying before you even start to work for them, you're not going to be able to be a trustworthy student.
Oh, and often scientists don't reply, so don't get disheartened. That's just so. Try some other scientist or send another mail after 15 days. Maybe improve it. Talk to your prof in college. Tell them what can you better. Take suggestion and write again. But rarely do they reply back. So yeah.
Thank you for that. That was, I think, really helpful about cold mails, because otherwise, you don't get replies and it's quite disheartening. And, I recently read that, student debt in US actually totals over $1.5 trillion. That's like more than the GDP of Russia. And the average student debt actually totals around $200,000. And after a master's, that is. And when I heard this, my organs literally hugged me. And so applying to scholarships is a necessity. But Paul, but some universities provide standard scholarships to all admitted students, like irrespective of their status, like, international or like that.
Yeah, so no one is going to give you a scholarship until you explicitly apply for one. And it's true that some universities do provide scholarships under different categories. So if you're applying to Europe, there are certain scholarships reserved for people coming outside the European region. And scholarships can be broken down into basically three main types. There'll definitely be subtypes. The first one is a scholarship that covers your tuition fee. The second one is a scholarship that covers your accommodation and your insurance. And the last one is very rare, but a scholarship that covers everything: your insurance, your accommodation, your tuition fee, if there is any tuition fee. So you need to, one thing that's very important with scholarships is deadlines. So if you miss the deadline, you've just lost out on it, and you'll have to pay a huge sum of money. And if you can't afford that, you just have to say bye to that university. So start applying early. In my experience, I applied to the Netherlands and Germany, and there are tons of scholarships offered by both these universities. I'm sure Arjun would know about, and everyone else would know about the DAAD.de site in Germany. I'll put that in the chat after I'm done speaking. That is a website that gives you all the information. They have a scholarship database basically, and you can put on filters like where you're from, what field you're getting into, and they will give you scholarship names that you can apply to. Apart from that, certain universities offer scholarships from their own departments, like in the Netherlands. I applied to 3 universities, Amsterdam, Leiden, and Groningen. And all of those universities offered scholarships by their department, by the university itself. So for example, the one from Leiden was called the Leiden Excellence Scholarship. And apart from that, the Dutch government itself also does offer scholarships. You can find information on that on studyinholland.nl. And apart from that, you also have a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a few Indian scholarships. And the most prominent one is the INLAC's Shivdasani Foundation Scholarship. Very difficult to get it, but it has been done before by one of our seniors from the zoology department. That covers everything: your flight ticket, your insurance, your accommodation, your tuition fee. But keep in mind, there is a catch. There are several catches with that scholarship, because they do not give scholarships to people in the field of healthcare, sorry, in the field of public health, in the field of engineering and stuff like that. So you will be here forever if I tell you about each and every scholarship. So you can just go onto the websites and do research by yourself.
I'd like to add something to what Rehan said about reading the fine print in the scholarships that you're applying for. That's really important. Because as he said, the fine print's like, so I know of the scholarship, the name doesn't like pop to my head immediately, but it was offered by the British Council, and it was like, I think it was either the Shevings or another one. But the fine print said, so it was a full ride, right? But the fine print said that you have to come back to India to work immediately after your master's is completed. So if you're looking at, and I think most of us, like, we don't just go abroad to just study for a year or two and come back, right? We want to get work experience, we want to get exposure. So yeah, so if you're looking for that sort of thing, you need to check if your scholarship allows you to like stay on there. Your visa will, but does your scholarship let you do that? So that's also important.
Pearl, anything else you would like to add to this question?
Yes, I do. Since I'm here to talk about a non-science point of view, I would like to bring up bachelor's scholarships also. So I have applied for a bachelor's program, and I would like to tell you that there are a lot more bachelor's scholarships, but the master's scholarships are definitely bigger and higher amounts, and they cover a lot more things. I can speak specifically for the UK because I applied for a lot of universities in the UK. Bachelor scholarships are not too big. Since you're an international student, they're already expecting you to have the funding to cover your studies and accommodation. So there's not too big scholarship for bachelors. And even when you are applying for a bachelor's program, since we are shifting fields from I moved from science to illustration. So that's very different for me. So I had to prove myself in very different ways. I had to explain why I am moving from science to arts, why am I making such a drastic change. They want to know if you are clear with your ideas and what you want to do in the future, and you're not taking this as a joke, as someone who's jumping from one field to another. And you also need to emphasize on what you picked up from your science degree and how will you be using it, even though it's a completely different field. As Tyra said, there's a lot of transferable skills, and you could maybe talk to your professors at university right now and find out what transferable skills you could apply to your area of interest.
Thank you, Paul. That's a very unique perspective that a lot of participants would like to know. So another thing that modifies me personally is the interviews. The professors, one-on-one interviews which they take during admissions, and I honestly don't know where to start. Like, what all am I supposed to know? Because some colleges say refer to Gilbert Dev Bio, which is like an 800 page book. Okay, and I personally can't memorize all of that. And the questions they ask also is about applications of these concepts. So, are there any specific ways that you would recommend how we should prepare for these interview rounds of foreign and Indian universities, that is?
I think all I would have to say here is you don't have to memorize the book. You need to sort of acquaint yourself with the basics. And from there, it's completely application based. So you just need to understand at least that's how I did it. Like you need to understand the concept. So because no one's going to ask you like straight cut question, right? They're just going to ask you, what would you do? Like it would be a hypothetical scenario where you have to apply your concepts. So just have your concepts really straight. And also like some universities, like they tell you who your interviewer is going to be. Probably read up on your interviewer a bit, but don't get intimidated because some of them have like mad CVs and you just get intimidated, but just read up about them. So, you can have a bit of a like, if you realize that your fields are like overlapping, they of course will be, but like if you have like a specific interest in something very specific that they do, keep that in mind, bring it up in conversation. The whole point is for them to like remember you and like to make a good impression. But yeah, but don't make like fake, like just don't try to like suck up to them because that they see through that. Just be genuine and know your basics. That's all.
What I did was I got in touch with alumni from universities using LinkedIn. I've realized a lot of science students don't use LinkedIn, but like it's very helpful. So you just get in touch with these alumni, and trust me, they're very helpful. They will, you ask them 100 questions, they'll answer all of them. So just use LinkedIn with the fullest. And like lastly, just be very thorough with everything that you've done in your undergrad and the main subject. So because they just ask you questions based and around your subject of interest. So just be very thorough with your stuff.
Oh, Rehan, please go ahead.
Yeah.
So you...
Yeah. So apart from just academic related stuff, they could ask you about other things as well, because my interview for the University of Bonn had a lot of focus on general things about my application and very, very little about immunology as a subject. They did ask technical questions, no doubt, but a few other things that you need to keep in mind are know exactly what you've mentioned in your statement of purpose. If you've mentioned something like you like the work of Professor XYZ, why do you like his work? What about his work do you like? Do you understand his work, or did you just put it in there because you saw that he's worked on a particular topic and it's on the university website? So that is something that you need to keep yourself well versed with, because this is, according to me, it's a problem. There are a lot of companies that write statements of purposes for students, and there's a lot of fraud in all of this. And when you start applying, you'll understand the whole gist of these companies that profit off desperate students basically. And you just need to know what you've written, write genuine things and answer genuinely. And keep in mind, if you do not know something, it's not the end of the world if you say I don't know, or I've not learned that yet. But when you're answering like that, do say that you don't know and you're willing to learn about the particular topic in the master's course.
Adding to what Rehan said, when you don't know an answer and you tell them that you don't know it, they actually help you, get to the answer. So you don't have to like panic. At least this happened with me. I didn't know an answer and I just told them, like I'm not sure and I don't know. So the guy, he was like, okay, so what happens after this? What happens after this? So they just help you get to the answer. So you don't have to panic about not knowing something because you're not expected to know everything.
A couple of things based on my experience. I've not given any Indian interviews, I'll make that clear. So firstly, if you're writing about mentioning projects and if they're going to ask you about your projects, know your projects thoroughly. You have to be pretty clear about it. And one more thing is that you drive the interview. The more, I had got this advice from prof, wonderful advice. You drive the interview, the more complexity you add into it, the more complexity you give them to question you back. So if you have two projects, say one that, just go with the one irrespective of where you have done it, what it included, go with the one that you are more thorough with first, and let that be your lead one, because you are expected to know what you've done. So if you don't know that, that's a bummer. And secondly, also in connection to what Tyra had said, sometimes they won't even tell you who your interviewer is. So you still have to go to the department, see the curriculum there. Again, in my experience, it was really helpful to tell them that when they ask you why this course in the university, when you are specific about the curriculum and tell them that, oh, this thing that you have added is something very unique to this university that I can't find anywhere else. So that's why I want to be here. Similarly, if there are some scientists whose work you can identify with and you like, and if they come in your panel, wonderful. If they don't, you still mention it, saying that these guys are people whose work is damn fascinating. Maybe, well, this is specific to me, but I had asked questions at the end of both my interviews, and frankly speaking, I think that was kind of unique. I don't know if a lot of people do that, but that really helped my case. So you can, obviously, you can do those things, and yeah, just be, and also, yeah, one important thing is that when they are, just prepare the parts about why this university and why this course several times until you're thorough with it before you go there, because these are two things that you should be fumbling about, and these are things that come at the start. So if you also, from a confidence point of view, if you start fumbling about these things earlier, it really throws you off for the rest of it. So yeah, practice is pretty important, obviously.
Sorry, I'd just like to add one thing, which is sort of off topic, but Rehan brought it up, and I think it's very like a brushed over topic, is having someone write your SOP for you or complete your application. Please don't do that. Starting off, SOP is something very personal to you. So you can't have someone write it, because essentially it's not only what you are on paper, but it's what you're beyond paper, right? It's your personality, it's you as a person. So you can't expect a third person who you've just probably paid, or even if someone close to you, even your friend, can't write it for you, because they don't know what's going on in your head. And it really needs to be personal. And universities weren't established a few years back. They've been dealing with having people write the SOPs for them since ages, and they can see through it. And the minute you do that, I think it's just over from there, and you're asked a lot of questions based on your SOP. So it's really important that you write it yourself and you know what you're writing in there.
Just one last thing I want to go over is, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but in interviews, you do get asked stuff that you haven't studied before, that isn't in your curriculum, and you also get asked stuff that isn't about the university itself, and I'm talking about current affairs. So in my case, I applied for an immunology program, and one question that I expected, an out of syllabus question that they asked, was vaccine design, and if I know about the current vaccines in my own country and the vaccines in Germany. So depending on whatever your field is, you need to keep yourself at least slightly well versed with the new or novel things that are happening, the new developments in research in that particular field.
I think all of these have been very useful insights. I think one important question that I have, and I think I know a lot of people have, is when you're working on your application, especially now that you don't have a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different things. I mean, okay, you're looking at what kind of courses can you do online? Can you do maybe like Rehan suggested, a bioinformatics project? But what can you mention in your application or your SOP that makes it stand out a little? How do you make it a little distinct? Tyra, Rehan, anybody can.
For me, it was a lot of extracurriculars and how you would be different from your classmates. So if you have a bunch of people in a group, what they want is different ideas. They want you to contribute to the class, and what will you bring to the class? So mine is an arts course, and I mentioned a lot in my SOP saying that I come from a science background, so I can bring a scientific perspective and a different art style to my class. So they want to know, how will you be different? How can you help the other students get new ideas?
I think another thing that I'd like to add is, so I don't know if anyone else has seen it this way, but at least that was a personal experience. Often in especially Xavier's, our courses are so intensive, and we're expected to do so much, which we do, that often the smaller things that we do, we just don't regard them. If we were to let's say do a a project for 20 marks for a CIA, we just say, okay, it's a CIA project. At least I looked at it that way. But when you're applying to universities, they give each and everything equal importance. So just a 20-mark project can be included there. You can write about, you can elaborate about it. And if you need to know how to write about it well. It's all about like, making it sound important when it actually is. Like you don't undervalue any of your work you do. You need to like see everything for its importance. That's really like, a key thing. Otherwise you're just left with barely anything to like write about.
And I guess even other things like, so for me, a large part of my SOP started off with talking about how I want to do my science going ahead. What is the kind of thinking that I want to have in my science going ahead, and how the course will help me do that. So that was a significant part of it. And then I wrote about how otherwise, I also spoke about how there are participations in classroom discussions, how maybe, so in my case, I like to read a lot. So I just spoke about those things as well. And how they have helped me build a certain perspective on things. So all of those things that you probably may not be, so I can't put it on my CV like, yeah, Arjun Udpar reads a lot of books. You can't do that. But these things can somehow you can integrate into your SOP. So that is something that can be done.
Sorry, I'm just keeping on butting in so much. But another thing is, as Arjun said, not only ahead, but probably give a brief background of yourself before your undergrad, probably what, pushed you to do this course. Like Pearl, she's like a classic example. She went from science to arts. Like that shows so much passion, and you need to highlight that passion in your SOP because eventually they have very high regards for passion. So you need to show you're passionate about the course. And personally, it happened for me, and I think I read a question about it in the chat box as well, not having a definitive career goal. So no one expects you to know, like, I want to do this by I'm 25, I want to do this by this time. It doesn't have to be like cut to cut. I'd say in your SOP, you can write, you don't sound really lost. You can write that I've not, decided completely what I want to do, but these are a few of the options I'd consider going into. And this course will help me, for me, I wrote that this course helps me leave my options open because it dabbles in two fields instead of focusing just on one. So that's again how the course is tailor-made for you. And yeah, no one expects you. So don't worry about like not knowing what you want to do. Just know what you like and find fields related to that.
And as Tyra had mentioned, transferable skills, that's a really, really important thing that I think everyone should include in their SOP. Of course, it's a personal preference, but I would urge you to, because right now in the field of immunology and infection and biology in general, one thing that is making the world panic is misinformation. And if you've done something like written a scientific article, I'm not talking about a review paper or research paper, I'm saying if you've written an article for a blog or something like that, or if you've been an editor or a designer or something for a science magazine, definitely include that and talk about how you want to do much more than just research in science, because it's definitely important to do your science. But if you're not communicating it to the general public, if you're not communicating it outside the scientific community, there is a point to your research, yes, but I think it makes a bigger impact when you're able to communicate important aspects of your work to the general public as well.
Yeah, I do agree. That's that's very important to that is the whole point of our organization also. To communicate science simply to other other students. So one thing about this is that there are, no matter what we do, there are standardized exams that we have to give, such as GRE, the TOEFL, and even exams in India. So what are your suggestions about that? So do we have to give the GRE, TOEFLs? Is the criteria is flexible in various colleges?
I think it's flexible because I don't think all universities require a GRE, but you will mostly require a TOEFL or a IELTS. So these things are important. I don't think these are negotiables, but obviously, but you can still write to the university saying mine is an English in case you really don't want to give them, but I don't know how you can get out of it. But GRE, I can give them. I don't think a lot of universities, every university that I ended up applying to didn't require a GRE. So that's maybe if they have a requirement of a GRE, and if you want to give it, and but for some reason you can't give it, you can always write to them saying this is how my curriculum is. So because at the end of the day, GRE is essentially a test of the amount of knowledge and the way you can apply it and stuff. So if your curriculum effectively conveys all of that, maybe that might also sort of help out.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Arjun. Like the GRE only tells you how good you are at the GRE, not at other applications. Yeah. So any other points, guys? People who have given the exams for entrance admission exams for Indian universities like GS or JAM.
I personally haven't, so the rest of them over here have. But at least from what I have,
Give my IELTS.
At least people from what I have seen and how they have sort of gone about preparing it for it, it's you need to do a lot of. I think it's the standard thing as people must have come across in their 12th. You need to see past papers. You need to be, especially there are things of physics and math, some of the papers. So you need to have your concepts there at least clear, and past papers give you some kind of an idea. So, but yeah, I don't want to speculate.
So for entrances like JAM and JG bills, like these are Indian entrance exams, you have physics and math also. And for students like us, like bio students, we haven't really studied physics and math for a very long time. So I've heard people start studying from the Christmas break. So they start with physics and math. And as and when you can just brush up your bio because you've done that in your undergrad 3 years. So I think, and if I'm not wrong, GRE and GMAT is for universities in the US, and IELTS and TOEFL are English proficiency exams. So every university mentions what they want. So I think you should just read up on the website.
Yeah, because that's a common misconception that GRE is entirely for US. In Munich, Technical University of Munich requires GRE as one of its criteria. One course in McGill required GRE as its criteria. So just keep an eye out for it.
Oh, and some courses don't have GRE as a necessity, but they write that if you give us a GRE score, your application would have a higher weightage. So keep an eye out for that too.
And just like Arjun, sorry for the
It's okay.
Just like Arjun mentioned, his course required GRE. So it's in Canada, for example, at McGill and British Columbia, several courses need GRE. So you cannot, just go by, okay, this university in general needs a GRE. It's very course specific. And I personally did not give the GRE because none of the universities I applied to asked for it. I did give the TOEFL English proficiency test. And for the universities that I applied to, instead of the TOEFL or the IELTS exam, you could give something called a medium of instruction letter, which is a letter from your college, which states that your education was in English and that you're proficient in it. But I would still recommend everyone to give at least one of the English proficiency tests, because it does definitely help with scholarships. Many Indian scholarships do ask for a good TOEFL score.
Just further emphasize on it that even if they mention medium of instruction, I would personally suggest that whether the medium of instruction is a good enough criteria, I would still strongly suggest writing to the coordinator and telling them, because you never know what might happen. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, last year because of COVID, a lot of universities that used to previously take GRE didn't take GRE anymore. So, but then I don't know if that has been brought back. So you also.
Yeah, as Arjun was mentioning, I think you need to check all of these universities individually and find out if GRE is compulsory or not. Some might have ratified their agreement to not have GRE scores anymore. But so you just have to go to the college website and check that out. If I'm not wrong, Arjun, that's what you were saying.
And write to the study coordinator. The contact is pretty clearly given. Just write to them both. They will for sure reply.
Yeah, Paul, you were saying something before. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to mention for my degree and my scholarships, they considered my 12th HSC English grades for language, but I would still recommend getting an IELTS just because getting jobs would be easier, because since you're not from an English speaking country, a lot of job applications would like to see an IELTS score.
One very, very important thing before you decide on an English proficiency test, make sure that that particular test is accepted by your university. Because I know people who have given the TOEFL exam and it's not accepted in their university. So they had to, and you have to give a fee for writing these exams. It's around 12,000 or 13,000 INR. So it's pretty expensive to prove that you can speak English. But yeah.
So I think, a lot of these applications actually vary a lot in the time period. So how do you go about it? I think US begins a bit earlier, UK begins a bit later. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Two things to keep in mind. One, UK and Belgium. KU Leuven in Belgium. From what UK, obviously these guys can further confirm, but from what I've heard, they have rolling admissions. So I presume the earlier you apply, the better. But some places don't have rolling admissions, or most of the places don't have rolling admissions and they have specific dates. Now, personally, what I had done is, much to the irritation of my family members, I had to send a query. So I started applications back in September. So I just wanted to practice apply for a university. So while I was not that keen on the course, but it seemed like an interesting one. I anyways had to write my SOP and stuff. So I just sent it off. So, but I would personally say the earlier you start, the better, because once you make your first draft for an SOP, you don't know how many changes you will make. The more time you give it, the more changes you can make, the more ideas will come in. So you should start as soon as possible. And with regards to Europe, keep an eye on deadlines, because there are two kinds of deadlines. One for European Union and EEA students, one for non-European Union students. I, for Switzerland, had not seen the European Union. I confused the European Union deadlines for the non-European Union deadlines. And invariably, the non-European Union deadlines, which is for us, is much earlier. So yeah, so take care about that. And also, one thing you'll have to keep in mind is LORs. You need to contact your profs early enough and tell them, ask them how much time they need upfront. So if they say I need 2 weeks, you need to keep that budget that time in mind. Some universities in Germany, Heidelberg University in Germany, requires you to courier the documents. So that also requires some time. And yeah, so you need to. Yeah, there's an interesting comment on the chat. We'll probably come to it later. Yeah, anyway.
Another thing.
Go ahead, Tyra, sorry.
Another thing you can do is, like, if you're applying, as Arjun said, we have like a rolling admission process in UK. So there, and like, as you know, each university, like not all, but some universities have an application fee. And I mean, it's not viable to pay that fee for, like 10 universities. Firstly, I'd say just apply to a few. You don't need to apply to like tons of universities. I've seen people like applying to, I don't know, 50 universities, and that just confuses you. So choose your universities and apply to a few universities. And perhaps if you have like a flexible, so what I did is I had my top 3 universities picked out. And I knew that I could start applying from as early as like the last week of September and go all the way to March. So I only applied to my first choice university initially. But I applied very early, so keep that in mind. Don't like apply last minute and then just apply to one. I only applied to the first choice that I had, that is Nottingham. And I waited for them. They say that they'll get back to you within a month. And my idea of doing this was that it was my first choice. I didn't necessarily see the sense in paying, like over like one application fee at UCL is about 8,000. And then there was Manchester. I didn't want to like, pay so many application fees initially. So I just applied to Nottingham. And as Arjun said, it's a good thing to like practice. That's where I went wrong. I applied to my first university, first preference as my first choice. Practice probably with another university, because you get like a feedback. If you're rejected, you get you're given a reason. It's just not like a rejection thing. You said like, your grades weren't good enough, your SOP was lacking. So have like a practice run at it earlier on. Don't leave everything for the last minute. And yeah.
I think all of this is excellent advice. I think one question that is in the chat box, and I think I've heard it from a lot of people, is our degrees in India are 3 years degrees. So we have 15 years of education, and a lot of unis, especially Canadian universities and US universities, require 16 years of education, a 4-year bachelor degree. So do you have any advice to people who want to apply to these courses? I know that sometimes it is a little subjective, but do you, from your experience, have any advice for these people?
I'm not entirely sure, but I've spoken to a few seniors, and they said so some universities, they accept applications from students who are from universities who have some I think an accreditation or something like that. I'm not really sure, but you can just email the university and ask if they accept something like that.
Yeah, so a few places in Canada, like 2 places that I was looking at was the University of British Columbia and McGill University. For University of British Columbia, they were accepting a 3-year bachelor's for the course that I was looking at, but there are some other criteria like like Karina said, your undergrad university's NAAC rating needs to be A or A plus, and that is something that is not in your control. It depends on the university that you're from, the university that you did your undergrad from. But a few other colleges in Canada, like the University of Alberta, for their courses in microbiology and immunology, they required a 4-year bachelor's with no exceptions. So there are, like, unfortunately, there are several Canadian and US schools that need a 4-year bachelor's, and there is no way to get around that unless stated explicitly on the website. If you still want to know, you can email the course coordinator about it, but a general trend is most places in Canada and USA take only a 4-year bachelor degree.
I'm sorry, I missed out the question. Was it specific to US and Canada, or was it just applications in general?
No, it was applications in general.
Okay.
I was just giving it.
No, regarding that, why I missed it out is because I just wanted to quote this line from Heidelberg University's website. The exact program that I've got into, one of the reasons why students don't get in is that the most common example of students not qualifying is a 3 years bachelor's degree from India. So my point being, universities on their websites will say that you need 180 ECTS and all of that stuff. They'll say that Indian students can't apply. You have an Indian student to go. So in my experience, I have applied exclusively to Europe, apart from Sweden, which was the only place which clearly told me no from because they only want a 4-year degree and not a 3-year degree. Other places, they say that they want a 180, so their way of credits is ECTS and stuff, and they might say that on their FAQ section, you may see that they say that Indian students can't apply and you might get disheartened. I would suggest you just still apply because you never know what it is, because that may be our curriculum, especially in Xavier, is rather exhaustive. So you never know if that is enough for them to convince themselves and be like, okay, this is enough. This guy didn't need another year or something on those lines. So I would personally say don't get disappointed once you see a certain criteria, especially if it's credit related criteria. Just apply nonetheless. And I have known several people who have done the same. I have done the same. I'm pretty sure even in Rehan's case, if Bond would have had a requirement of 180 or some ECTS, but clearly we don't have it. So yeah, you just apply.
Bond did require 180, but I was still granted admission.
I think one question that I have for Pearl specifically. Pearl, you have a very unique experience over here of switching streams. So you were a science student, you were doing a bachelor's in life science, now you're doing illustration. Do you have any specific advice for people who might want to switch their streams similarly, about any problems you faced while you were considering switching streams, or even in your application process that you can tell us about?
Okay, so you need to make sure that you know why you are switching and you know what you want to do with your degree. Don't go around switching, just think about it. think about it if you really want the degree, and is this something you really want to do, and think about how you can use the degree that you already have. We don't want that degree to go to waste, and your admissions officers also do not want you thinking that you are going to waste the degree. They don't want you to completely switch streams. They want you to use skills that you've gotten from all your degrees. So right now, if I say I am an illustrator, I'm an illustration student, instead of putting it that way, I could say I am a science communicator. I can illustrate scientific concepts, and that's what makes me stand out from my other classmates. And they like that. They like it when you stand out. They like it when you do a bunch of extracurricular activities. So yeah, that's very important. They don't want you to completely be jumping ship all the time. They want to know that you know what you want to do, and you've thought about it, and you've considered all your options, and you know for sure this is what you want to do.
Thank you so much for that, Pearl. I think Mitali in the chat has a question specific to you. Whether you had to submit a portfolio as part of your application when you switched over streams.
I did have to submit a portfolio, and all universities have different portfolio requirements. So you could maybe have one sample portfolio, and then while applying for different universities, you can change it to match their portfolio description and send unique portfolios to every university you're applying to. Also, another thing about switching courses is, since you have time to apply right now, make sure you're getting some kind of experience in the field that you want to join, because experience is always good. They don't want you completely new to the scenario. You're coming from science, you don't know anything about the arts, and we don't even have a 12th background in arts. I did science there too. So they want to know that you have some kind of dedication to the field, you've done something, you're at least a little bit familiar about the concepts, because they don't want you coming there and having to teach you what a circle is, what a line is.
I think that's a genuinely useful insight because it's so different and it's not a very common one. So thank you so much for that, Pearl. I think we're done with almost all our questions. And we've covered, I think, a lot of the questions in the chat here as well.
I think there is one more question that we could address before we leave, I guess. So I think
Sure.
Keepsy put in the chat that, if it's advisable to do a 2-year MSc degree or a 1-year MSc degree, which is an accelerated degree, I presume, and or does it just depend on the curriculum? There are a lot of integrated MSc PhD courses which get over in 3 years, 4 years, that way. So is that advisable?
Okay, Arjun, go ahead.
No, I think 1 year and 2 years is quite different from the whole MSc PhD business. So
yeah, generally just accelerated programs. Is it advisable to do accelerated programs? I think that's what. Okay.
No, because 1-year degrees are all through UK, if I'm not wrong, are 1-year degrees. So
or an accelerated.
and I don't think
a set thing of the country. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if at least in UK, so Kyra, can you directly apply to a PhD from a master's and have a shorter PhD?
No, there are sort of integrated programs that you could look at, but there's nothing. So in UK, our master's is only for 1 year, whereas in some other countries it's for 2 years. And I was told often by people that 1 year master's isn't going to help you anywhere and all. It's not going to have any weightage. There's nothing like that. You a few Indian universities which are public funded will not recognize your 1 year masters, but most of the reputed Indian universities recognize a 1 year's master program. Essentially, your credits are the same amount as a 2 years program. It's just more intensive, and that's just how it works in certain countries.
Great. I think
I had a different.
Go ahead.
Okay. So personally for me, I was very clear on taking a 2-year degree and not a 1-year degree, because I at least thought that the whole of last year went in practicals and stuff. So for my whole idea was that in my program I get to do several lab rotations, a master's thesis, and I get a lot of practicals. So that can be, so I think it's a very personalized thing based on what you like. And regarding the master's PhD across you, that again also I think depends on what you want to do. Like, for example, do you really want to commit 4 years? Or that being said, a lot of these master's PhD programs allow you to leave after the master's, but then very few people do. And the whole point of it is to prepare the master student for a PhD continuing there. So so those things is something that you'll have to decide. But sometimes the advantages with master's PhD programs, like in Germany, some of the Max Planck programs, is that they give you funding right from your master's. So you get a stipend right from it. So there are caveats, pros and cons. I guess I personally think it's a individual thing. You need to talk to keep the last 2 years in your mind, thinking that you probably have had no practical experience. Would you really want to have 1 year, or you want to take it a little slow?
That's an excellent point.
Another degree which I realized we've not really spoken about is your MRes, which is a master's in research. So it's like there's a taught master's and there's an MRes. So master's in research focuses more on research oriented learning, and your learning isn't exactly your conventional classroom type. It's more research oriented, and that's a different master's too. Like if you're really sure that you want to go into like a research field, you should consider an MRes. But some MRes courses require you to have prior like research experience, and it's given more importance. So if you know you want to do a MRes, just try to get that experience early on,
I saw in the comments someone saying either a PG diploma or no, it was a diploma or a postgraduate, I think, certificate diploma, right? So I can talk about the industry because like I don't want to go into the research field. I want to pursue the industry. So if you compare both, master's pays better than the certificate diploma for the industry. Suppose if I want to go into, if I become a practicing clinical embryologist, a master's degree will pay me better than a certificate diploma.
Yeah, I do agree. So as Tyra said, we can go on and on with these questions. There are a lot of questions then which you need to address, which potentially we don't have the time for that. So we just like to say, like, even Arjun mentioned, it's highly specific to universities. And these are like general pointers which all the panelists mentioned. And the application processes are very, very specific to every university. So be very careful to read through everything. Like our panelists have already mentioned, read the fine print for the scholarships, every single thing. And be very careful about what decisions you take. And with that, I think we can end with the word of thanks. How would you like
I had a couple of things to add. I saw it on the chat and I thought it's pretty important to address it. There were two things. There was one thing mentioned about CVs and SOPs. Now, a lot of people, there's something that I've noticed, a lot of people do that. Don't just Google a CV format and put that CV format, because a lot of times a CV for a scientific research-oriented program is slightly different. It's not, if you go online, you'll find like people putting a photo with 3 lines, finishing it up in a page and a half. Don't do that. Like, best people to ask is, unless there's a career development program coming up. So I know Life Science Department offers some. I think we had one a couple of months back as well, which is very good. If you are not part of it, or if you have not managed to participate in that, send your CV, send your SOP to your profs. Give them enough time, budget that time, send it to your profs. They will tell you what changes to make. And one thing that I don't know if you guys have thought about, but then LORs is something you guys need to figure out, because if for us, our profs could write us LORs because also they have seen us over the last 2 years and they've seen us work in labs. Even if we have not interacted much in the class and stuff, they've seen us in person. You guys need to probably think about that, as to you are not working in the lab in front of them. You need to find a way how in your classroom or in your work, you are trying to, so maybe participating in discussions, in your practical times, asking questions, just presenting. These small things, I guess, will really help you out for LORs in the coming future, especially for second years and third years, because it's something that, well, sort of making points, I realize that this is going to be very different for us and for you guys.
So I guess we're done.
As I think everyone's mentioned, there's a million questions that everybody could ask, but I hope that some of these general pointers have covered a lot of the queries that people tend to have about their applications after doing online uni. So I'd like to thank everyone who's present here. We're exceptionally grateful to our panelists, Arjun, Rehan, Karina, Tyra, and Pearl, for taking time out of your schedules. I know you're a lot busy with preparing for your own masters, but thank you for coming here and giving us insight into our application experiences based on your own. And I hope all of the participants have found this session to be useful. We look forward to seeing you at all future events by UG STEM peers. We'll definitely be organizing some more, since our goal is to help all of you with your science undergraduate. And we do look forward to seeing your contributions to our website also, as you never know, writing a little bit here and there might aid your applications too. So thank you so much for coming today.